Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says, what does the killing mean for Iran? This article here is speaking about the assassination of Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. Who is he? He happens to be a senior nuclear scientist and he was also the head of research and innovation organization at the Ministry of Defense in Iran. This happens to be the killing which is of a high profile person, that which has been taking place after the death of General Qasim Soleimani. So all the senior people who are part of the government and its functionaries have been killed. That is because of the geopolitical tensions that is happening with Iran as well as other countries. So the first important question is, who is Mohsin Fakhrizadeh? He happens to be a senior scientist. He is also called as the father of Iran's nuclear program, and according to United States of America and Israel, it is he who oversaw Iran's nuclear weapons program in the year 1990 and even in early 2000s as well. He happens to be a key figure when it comes to the Iran's nuclear program. He is also been described as Iran's Robert Oppenheimer. So who is Robert Oppenheimer? It is he who was part of United States of America's Manhattan Project. So what is this Manhattan Project? This is a project which was responsible for research and development and design of atomic bomb in the United States of America. Since he was the one who went with the research and design of the atomic bomb in the United States of America, now Mr. Mohsin Fakhrizadeh is being compared to Robert Oppenheimer as well. Now what we have to look at is the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. So what is this Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action? We have United States of America and many other countries had come up together. They had requested Iran that they should not be enriching the uranium as part of the nuclear development, which can be a catastrophe to the world. To this particular agreement, Iran had also given consent to it under the Obama administration. But then what happens? We have the incoming of the Trump administration. Trump administration immediately withdraws this particular agreement and Iran is left all alone. So what exactly happens? Iran now also wants to command some respect. It also wants to dominate in geopolitics in the West Asia region. So what does it do? It starts enriching the uranium. It also starts conducting some nuclear operations as well, because expecting that this could become a problem in the Western Asia, there are allegations that this particular activity of assassination was carried by Israel and they have assassinated Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. Why is this important? That is because Iran has increased the stockpile of low enriched uranium, that which is beyond the prescribed limits under the nuclear deal, and as a result it is being alleged Israel has conducted this activity so that it can slow down the progress of Iran. So who killed him? Iranian foreign minister has said that it is Israel which has planted this particular issue. In the past 10 years, it is not only this senior scientist who was killed, there have been other senior scientists who were also killed, which is alleged to be from Israel as well. Now when you go back to the year 2010 and much earlier as well, we have one of the important viruses called as the Stuxnet virus. So this can be a very important question from your preliminary examination point of view. This was designed by United States of America and Israel as well. So what does this virus do? This basically attacked all the nuclear processing facility in Natanz in Iran. So what is this all about? This brought about a substantial damage when it comes to the nuclear operations in the country of Iran. So this Stuxnet virus was all about bringing damage to the nuclear weapons program in Iran. So a similar attempt is now taken by Israel, says some of the allegation. We do not know whether it is right or not, but it is being alleged that it is Israel which has committed this act. How was this person killed? Fakhrizadeh's car was targeted by an explosion and a machine gun in Absurd. Kindly remember, this can be a places in news, so there can be a preliminary question for your examination. So Absurd is a place that is present in Iran, so kindly remember this name. Now that he is killed, what could be the geopolitical implications with respect to Iran as well as other countries as well? The main fear because of his killing, this will have a chain reaction in the Western Asian region. We also have US President elect Joe Biden, who also wanted to settle things up. He also wanted to get back the joint comprehensive plan of action as well, and also wanted to make sure that Iran complies by these rules. But now, since this particular issue of assassination has escalated, there could be a problem for instituting the joint comprehensive plan of action. And at the same time, what we also witness is that the acrimonious relationship between United States of America and Iran may further exasperate due to this particular issue. Now the question is, will it have a setback on the nuclear program of Iran? Yes is the answer. Why? Because since he was the senior scientist who was overseeing the majority of the nuclear programs, what we will actually witness is there will be a slowness, or this can slow down the Iran's nuclear ambitions. What was Iran also looking at? Iran was also looking at, if it is able to enrich the uranium, come up with a nuclear program, they could also use this nuclear program as a bargaining chip with the United States of America. But this again is lost, says this article. But there are others who says that this particular issue or the assassination and the killing of this person will not matter to Iran as well. Why? When you look at General Qasim Soleimani, he was also killed as well. Within few days, there were people who replaced him. Yes, this person might be important. Yes, this person might have added value as well. But there are a number of scientists who are also giving the knowledge, their research and their administration with respect to the nuclear program. So eliminating only one person who is assumed to be the senior, who oversaw all these operations, might not look good, and Iran will further continue to enrich the uranium and build up the nuclear operation program, says some of the others. Now what we have to look at is, what are the options that are available with Iran. When you look at the options that are available with Iran, there are two options. One, they go on war, that is, they also carry out limited strikes as well. The other is they keep quiet as well. Why keep quiet? Because you have the US President elect Joe Biden, who has promised to bring back the joint comprehensive plan of action. So they may have to wait few more months. They do not want to upscale this particular issue. If this gets instigated, you might have United States of America, Israel both coming in, and there might be a scenario where US President elect Joe Biden might not be able to do anything when he steps in. So all that they have to do is to wait for a few months, ask the US administration to help them during this particular process after the Trump administration is completely withdrawn. There is another issue as well. Let's say, for example, if they do not do anything, then within the country there might be people who might also feel that the government, the military is not doing enough, and this can also be a threat to the government and the regime as well. So what they can also do is they may take up some action, and this might also have limited action and strike programs as well. So these are some of the options that are available with Iran. Now what we have to focus is on impact on India. When you look into India, India also wants a peaceful relationship with Iran as well. India also wants a peaceful relationship in the West Asian region as well. In case there is chaos, in case there is tranquility and peace which is disturbed, it will have a spillover effect to India as well. How? Let me give you an example. United States of America has imposed sanctions on Iran. So we are not able to have fruitful relationship with Iran. We are also not able to import energy reserves as well. India is also an energy deficit country. If we do not have a good relationship, what we will have is the major problem with respect to fuel and energy imports. And at the same time, we have also invested hugely in the Chabahar port. It is this Chabahar port which is given an access from Iran to enter into Afghanistan from Iran, which will connect us to Central Asia as well. If this particular country is in chaos, then we would not be able to reach Afghanistan, we would not be able to make exports to Central Asia, and India will be the major sufferer. And apart from this, we also have China, which has expanded the relationship with Iran as well. if there is chaos, India will obviously have to side United States of America. That is when our relationship with Iran might also slip as well. So what we have to wait and watch is that Iran does not take any measures. There is a temporary pause in their actions, and after the new president comes in, that is when all the processes can be initiated, is what this article all about. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says the complexities of cyclone forecasting. This article basically looks at what are the different tools and options that India currently has to identify when a cyclone is popping up in that particular region. There are four options that India currently looks at. One is the Doppler weather radar. Second is the collaboration with other countries. Third is the satellites that India has. And fourth is what is called as the ocean buoys. First up, what is this Doppler weather radars? These are the radars which help in identification of a cyclone in a particular region. Let's say for example, we have the conventional radars. These radars were also able to identify and predict the cyclones as well. But when it comes to the Doppler weather radars, they give a detailed information about the storm's internal wind flow, and they also give us the structure as well that was not present under the conventional system. So the advantage with the Doppler weather radar, it gives a clear picture and structure about the cyclone that which is originating in the sea ocean. Currently, India has about 27 Doppler weather radars that which is present throughout the country. So the first important factor is that the Doppler weather radar is much beyond and much better when it comes to the conventional radar. When it comes to the Doppler weather radar, they are also in advantageous position as well. They also give us all the data at least 5 to 6 days before. So if they are giving us data much prior to actual formation, we would be in a better position to save lives and property as well. How? Let me give you an example. In the present scenario where there was cyclone Nivar, what exactly happened? The Indian Meteorological Department gave advanced warnings to the state governments. So the state governments of Tamil Nadu, state governments of Andhra Pradesh, and to a limited extent states like Karnataka were able to take some of the measures. They were able to push people from the low-lying areas into an area where they were safer places. So this particular idea of giving the information 5 days prior, or in fact much earlier, will help the state governments operating in that particular state to take all precautions to save the people as well as property. So the severity of the weather systems can be quantitatively estimated more accurately than ever before when it comes to the Doppler weather radars. So the Doppler weather radars provides all the advanced information, provides the lead time, helps in saving of life as well as property. Then we have to look at what is called as the collaboration. So what is this collaboration? India might have satellites. India might also have advanced technological tools as well. But sometimes all this would not be required. Why? Because something else might be originating in, let's say, Pacific Ocean, or something else is brewing in Atlantic Ocean. There are countries in and around them, so they also gather information. They also have their own satellites as well. They might also have their own space stations as well. So these countries will have a close cooperation and nexus with India. So what exactly happens here? We have United States of America and Japan, which has entered into some collaborative rules and regulations and agreements with India. We have the Indian Space Research Organization, or let's say for example their own space research organization, or we have the Indian Meteorological Department. Likewise, they have the Japan Meteorological Agency. So they exchange the data so that they are able to tabulate and get the right information about the origination and formation of cyclone like conditions. So what is this collaboration? This is where one country will start exchanging data with another country so that they can prevent any disastrous consequences that which might result from that cyclone. So India in the present scenario has entered into a collaboration with the Japan Meteorological Agency, the US National Hurricane Center, and the US Central Pacific Hurricane Center, so that all the data can be exchanged and we would be able to protect our people as well as our property. The third important factor for the detection of cyclone is the satellites. There are number of meteorological satellites which helps in improving an identification and detection as well. Let's take the example of SCATSat. So what is this SCATSat? This is one of the satellites which provides all the weather forecasting, cyclone prediction and also tracking different services in India when it comes to the weather related issues. Then we have something called as the ocean buoys. So what is it? This is shown as in the picture. So what will happen is this particular ocean buoy will have sensors. This might be with respect to air or it might be with respect to the water. So what it will do, it will calculate all the relevant information with respect to the weather related parameters. So what will happen in this particular case, it will identify the wave height, the wind speed and the direction, air and water temperature and also barometric pressure as well. So once all these sensors are able to identify it, they are able to capture the data, they would be able to forecast the same and cyclone warnings will be taken up and similar precautionary measures will be taken up by the government. So they send out all the real-time data that which is required for the calculation and ultimately this will help in reduction of the loss of lives as well as property. So these are number of tools that India uses to identify whether there is an origination of a cyclone and how and where it will make a landfall, and we would be in a position to cut down on the lives as well as property. Now what we have to focus is with respect to India. When it comes to India, we have this as the coastal belt. There is Arabian Sea here. We also have Bay of Bengal here. What is more trickier? Is it the Bay of Bengal or the Arabian Sea? It is Arabian Sea, says this article. Why? Because sometimes when you realize that cyclones in Arabian Sea can get trickier because they may recurve and hit India as well. That might not happen in Bay of Bengal, says this article. And at the same time, when you look at the radars that are present, most of the radars are present on the eastern coast, that is along the Bay of Bengal. So we are in a much better position to identify where these cyclones originate, where they might make a landfall, and we would be in a better position to identify and make sure that we take all types of precautionary measures. Why? One is because they do not recurve, and the second is we have more radars on the eastern coast, says this article, and as a result we would be in a much better position when it comes to cyclones originating in Bay of Bengal, says this article. It is this that we have to understand with reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says scaling new heights. This article here is speaking about the collaboration between public enterprises like NASA, and it also speaks about private sector involvement in the space operations like the SpaceX. In this particular backdrop, we have to understand what can India learn from this collaboration which involves a private agency and a government agency in United States of America. When you look at United States of America, what is its state agency? What we have is NASA, which is one of the state agencies which is into space exploration and its activity. We have the private organization as well, and that happens to be SpaceX. So what is happening right now? There is a clear-cut coordination and collaboration when it comes to the space related activities between NASA as well as SpaceX. So what is happening of late? United States of America state agency NASA in the past has explored number of space operations. It has also conducted couple of missions as well. Now it is also entertaining the private agencies like SpaceX. Let me give you some of the examples. With its reusable rockets, large capsules to carry payloads and also crew and competitive pricing, SpaceX has revolutionized the space sector. Let me give you an example. We have the launch of the Crew Dragon spacecraft, which carried to the International Space Station 4 astronauts very recently. We also have the launch of 60 Starlink internet relay satellites, which have also planned to provide internet to the world over. These are some of the steps taken by SpaceX. Earlier, when you look at United States of America, all these operations and its functionalities were implemented only by the state operations. Now we have the independent private organizations which are stepping in and also providing and enhancing all these activities when it comes to the space operation. Now the question is, what is the picture in India? Do we have a similar private agencies which is also playing a part when it comes to the space operations. When it comes to India, we have ISRO, which has done and implemented all the major missions when it comes to the space operations. But when it comes to the private agencies, they have a very limited role. As of now, hiring of the vendors, rocket components and its manufacturing have been given out, or they have been outsourced to the external agency. But when it comes to actual launch of the vehicles, the private agencies have a very limited role. So what can we learn from the United States of America? Since there is a close coordination between NASA and SpaceX, they are also able to cut down on the cost as well. India can also take up a similar approach as well. When it comes to space operations, we have something called as the core operations, or what is also called as the exploration. Then we have something called as the commercial activities. What are these core exploratory projects? Let's say for example, India has to send one of its missions to the moon, or let's say India has to send a mission to the Mars. These becomes the exploratory projects or the core projects. But there are something else. What are these? These are commercial in nature. When it comes to India, what can be the commercial aspects? Let's say for example, the DTH service, or let's say for example, the internet penetration. These are the activities where the private sector can also be involved as well. So what will happen? We have the core functionalities which can be taken up by the ISRO, and we will have the non-core functionalities like the commercial upgradation which can be taken up by the private sector. With this, what we will have is reduction of the burden with respect to ISRO. They might also cut down on the cost as well. Why? Because these two will be focused by the private sector. So when we involve the private sector, ISRO can focus more on the core sector, and we will have the private sector stepping in, and we will also have more competition is what we have to understand. But can we expect the Indian space companies to do all this? That is where the major problem is. The major problem right now is with respect to the budget. When it comes to ISRO, we have the government of India which also provides a part of the budget to ISRO. But when it comes to the private agencies, it is a profit making module or an individual or an organization which has to pump in the money as well. So how will they get the money? Even if they get the money, let's say for example, tomorrow Ambani decides that he has to part of the space exploration program. Just a hypothetical example. Or let's say for example, tomorrow Lakshmi Mittal, or let's say Tata's, or let's say Infosys, or any other company for that matter, they also want to get into the space exploration. Yes, they might invest the money as well. Yes, they will have the money as well. But then when it comes to the private operations, they look at profits. But what is the major concern here? The major concern is the long gestation period. So what is this long gestation period? They might invest today, but when it comes to the profits, it takes a lot of time as well. And only when they are able to prove their credentials, only when they have successful attempts, that is when they will get the projects and commercial launches as well. When it comes to ISRO, only because ISRO has been able to prove its credentials, that is why it is able to launch commercial satellites of some other countries as well as organizations as well. But when it comes to the private organizations in India, it has a long gestation period, which means they have to invest the money, they have to successfully prove it, they have to prove their credentials. That is when other companies, other countries can trust them, and that is when they'll start investing when it comes to the commercial satellites. And apart from that, let's say for example, the government of India has also come up with number of schemes and programs. Let's say the Digital India program or the Smart Cities program. For all this, what we require is high speed internet. So for the high speed internet, what we require is the real-time navigation, telecommunication services based on earth imaging. This can again be provided by the private agencies as well. So what the ISRO should do, in case it is letting the private agencies work, explore and also be a part of the space revolution like it is happening in United States of America, what we require is one of the institutions. So what is this institution? Let's say for example, when it comes to India right now, ISRO is one of the player. What do we mean by player? It is actively a participant when it comes to the space exploration. Who is the regulator? Regulator is also ISRO. So let's say hypothetically, ISRO will not do this for sure, but let's say hypothetically, let's say ISRO is also a regulator. It does not want competition from the private entrepreneurs, or it does not want private entrepreneurs or the agencies to step into the boot of ISRO. Why? Because it will snatch away all these important commercial functionalities. In that particular case, we might have conflict of interest. Why? Because ISRO will be the regulator, it will also be a player. So what it will ask that particular agency or that particular private agency is to follow n number of steps, so they will be in a loop only to get permission from ISRO. This is where conflict of interest arises. So what should we do? So we need to have an independent institution or a regulatory body. So this regulatory body will see ISRO as an independent body, it will see a private agency as an independent body, and they will lay a structure and a foundation, and as per this structure and foundation, irrespective of whether it is a government agency or a private agency, they have to comply by it. So what we require is a regulating body or a institution apart from ISRO. So both the state and the private agencies will have to be seen equally, and they should be weighed on parity, is what this article focuses on. So in the near future, in case there is a dispute and in case there is a judgment that is given by this regulatory institution, then if it is opposed by any of the parties, we will also require an appellate jurisdiction as well. So responding and coming up with an appellate jurisdiction and an office is also a key important factor. When we are establishing such an institution or a regulatory mechanism, what we require is people from technical proficiency. We cannot have the bureaucrats who are coming into this particular process. Yes, the bureaucrats are intelligent. Yes, the bureaucrats have cleared one of the toughest examinations as well, but they are not experienced when it comes to the space technology. They might not know what is to do with the specialization of space exploration. So what we require is independent technocrats who would be able to understand the sensitivity behind the technology. So in case we are coming up with a regulatory mechanism and institution, this should not be manned by the bureaucrats, but what we require is technocrats who know the whereabouts of this particular field. So all those people who have had the experience in the field of space exploration, such people should be part of this regulatory mechanism or the institution. So what we require is parity, for which what we require is a regulatory mechanism, and establishment of the regulatory mechanism needs to be taken up going forward, says this article. And apart from this, this article further speaks about space tourism as well. It says that in the near future it might be less expensive. As of now, since we have limited competition, since we have very less private participants who are coming up with this program, there is expense or it might be costly as well. But in the near future, we will have more programs that which might be taken up by the private entrepreneurs as well as organizations as well. There are two parts of space tourism. One is that people would want to experience few minutes of microgravity. That can be one part of it, or there can be another part where space travelers can also go and travel to the International Space Station, live there for few weeks as well. Such can also be explored in the near future when it comes to space tourism. As a concluding bit, we can actually say that private sector participation will add immensely to the India's contribution when it comes to the space exploration, is this article all about. It is this that we have to understand with reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, is the tropical zone of Earth expanding? When it comes to the Earth, the planet Earth is divided into three climatic zones. What are the three climatic zones? We have the tropic zone, then we have the temperate zone, and finally what we have is the frigid zone. Our focus today would be with respect to the tropic zone. So how is it divided? The tropic zone extends from the equator 23.5 degree to the north and 23.5 degree to the south as well. So this particular part of the Earth gets the most direct sunlight throughout the year. It is also characterized by high temperature, and it is also characterized by high rainfall in this particular region. So what is this region known for? It is known for high temperature as well as high rainfall. Now researchers have come up and said that this warm temperature zone, that is this particular tropic zone, is actually expanding much beyond the 23.5 degree. So the warmth which was present in this particular region is now increasing much beyond 23.5 degree on the north as well as on the south, says the researchers. Why is this expanding? That is because of the anthropological factors. So what are these human made factors? That is the greenhouse gases, increase in the aerosols and decrease of ozone when it comes to the major factors contributing for the expansion or the extinction of this particular tropical zone. So what we have to understand is another major factor which has been contributed by one of the research papers, and it says that oceans have been another major reason for increasing or expanding the tropical region. What does this research paper speak about? This research paper currently says that the human induced action has been a major problem even to the oceans as well. How does this happen? Let me give you an example. We have the large ocean currents. We have the warm waters which is present near the equator. We also have the cold water which is present near the pole. So the circular ocean currents carry the warm water towards the poles and they also carry the cold water towards the equator as well. So what is happening here? There is warm water and the cold water which is getting distributed as a result of the ocean currents. This has also been taken into picture by the research scholars, and they say ever since the industrial revolution has happened in the 1800s and until recently, what we have witnessed is that there is increasing temperature or the warmth of the ocean waters, and as a result of which what is happening is there is an expansion of the tropic region, says this particular article. So what would be the impact when this particular issue surfaces and when there is expansion of the tropical region? What we will witness is profound impact both on the economic terms and also on the social terms as well. This particular process, if that happens and if it gets into the reality, what we will have is that these storm paths that are present across the world will also cause severe wildfires as well. Let's take the example of California fires, or let's take the example of Australia bushfires. These might also be because of the tropic expansion, says this particular research paper. As climate zones change, animals also migrate. They also migrate to different regions as well. Biodiversity gets reduced, ecosystems gets reduced, species cannot adjust, and ultimately most of the species within that particular region and plants might also face extinction as well. This is where we also have to learn a concept what is called as the keystone species. So what is this keystone species? Let's say for example, if there is a particular species, let's take the example of wolf or the higher level predators. In all these cases, in case there is this particular species that is removed from that particular environment, the environment can even cease to exist in that particular place. So according to this research paper, in case there is a shift in this particular tropical region, then what we will have is the extinction of the biodiversity present in that particular part. And if it hits the keystone species, the entire region might also face a lot of issues, says this article. It is this that we have to understand with reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about Ayurveda doctors and sanction for surgeries. We have been discussing this article in the last 1 week as well. All that this article carries forward is limited context with reference to the surgeries. So what are these points made under this article? The article currently goes on to say that yes, postgraduate students from the Ayurveda domain will be taught about surgeries as well. Will it be all domains? No. There are only limited domains where they would be able to perform surgeries. In there, they would be taught for about 3 years, says this article. And apart from this, we also have to understand whether the standards that which is being taught in the Ayurveda colleges, is it meeting the standards that which is prescribed in the actual MBBS doctors. They also do MDs and MS as well. So in case the standards of the post graduation students with respect to MBBS and with respect to the non-MBBS students, is it the same, is what we have to look at. Now let's say say all these postgraduate students have passed as well. Will they be posted only in the rural sector? No, they might also be posted anywhere in India as well, since the MBBS doctors have no provision that they have to only work in the rural sector. Similarly, in case there is a postgraduate Ayurveda doctor who is actually finishing his studies in the near future, he can work in the rural sector or he can work in the urban sector as well. There has been another proposal as well. Let's say, for example, there is a post graduation Ayurveda doctor. Will he be an assistant of the doctor who is performing the surgery, or will he be actually performing the surgery? Let's say I am a patient, I go to a doctor, I also need to know the credentials of the doctor, how many operations he has performed, and if this particular doctor is an Ayurveda postgraduate doctor, this also has to be told to the patient, is another fair point made under this article. Why? Because the Ayurveda doctors might not have similar experience to that of the MBBS doctor. So it is his responsibility to also tell the patient that he happens to be a postgraduate Ayurveda doctor. Only after taking the consent from the patient, he should be in a position to perform the activity. Apart from this, the article also makes a valid statement as well. That is about the allopathy doctors or the modern doctors who actually do not want to work in the rural sector. Most of these high profile doctors usually want to work in the urban areas. Why urban areas? Because these days hospitals are being run like the multinational companies. They have a huge management team as well, and they are getting huge money as well as salaries as well. In case they go up to the rural areas, they would not be able to make the money. So what has the government done? The government has introduced and tried to address this particular issue by coming up with number of policies. So what are these policies? The government has introduced what is called as the rural bonds. So they have to work for number of years as part of the bond program, that which the government has introduced. Then we also have something called as the quota. What is this quota? Let's say there is an MBBS doctor. This person has completed MBBS, and even before he's completing MBBS, he signs a particular bond and he enters into a rural area, and after he's worked in the rural area, this person gets a quota for the post graduation as well. So certain number of seats will be reserved for this person who has worked in the rural area. So there'll be a separate quota, that which the government has also come up with. The government has also tried to increase the number of colleges in the rural area. Why? Because when there are rural colleges, there will also be a hospital, and they have to comply by it, and they have to work in the rural sector. So these are some of the measures that the government has come up with in all these programs, so that all these doctors from the modern medicine actually work in the rural sector. Apart from this, the article currently goes on to say that the government needs to come up with innovative methods and schemes so that it can attract the modern medicine doctors towards the rural India. It is this that we have to understand with reference to this article. Now let's look into some of the preliminary practice questions. Consider the following statements. Odisha is the only state in India having all the three species of gharial, Magga and saltwater crocodile. IUCN status of gharial is endangered. Which of the above statements are correct? The answer to this is one only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, yes, it is the state of Odisha which has all these crocodiles present within its territory. And we also have to remember the IUCN status of gharial is not endangered, but it is critically endangered. What is the major issue here? We have number of fishermen who go for fishing, and in case there is a net that they have put for catching the fish, and if it catches the gharial, in such a scenario they have even killed the gharials as well. That is why the Odisha government has come up with a conservation program. So what is this conservation program? In case there has been a loss of net, in all those cases the fishermen will be compensated by the state government. In the present scenario, we also have to remember that there are important places for the conservation of crocodiles. We have Tirkarpada for the gharial in Angul, Ramatirtha for muggers in Mayurbhanj in Odisha, and we also have Bittakarnika for the saltwater crocodile in Kendrapara district. And apart from this, there are also captive breeding centers at Nandankanan for all the three crocodiles. So kindly remember all these important places, and also remember it is Odisha which happens to be the only state in India having all the three species of crocodile. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following are correctly matched? We have the port and the country this port in present in. Hambantota, Sri Lanka; Hodeidah, Saudi Arabia; Sabang and Vietnam. The answer to this is one only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference with reference to Sri Lanka. When it comes to Hambantota, yes, it is in Sri Lanka, but when it comes to Hodeidah, it is not in Saudi Arabia, but this is present in Yemen. And when it comes to Sabang, it is not present in Vietnam, but instead it is present in Indonesia. So kindly remember, these questions can also be asked in your preliminary examination. When it comes to these two articles, India is entered into agreement with Maldives as well as Sri Lanka for what? For promoting regional cooperation. For what? When it comes to exchanging information about terrorism, radicalism, extremism, drugs and arms, human trafficking, money laundering cases, cyber security, and the effect of climate change and the maritime environment. So all the data that is present with one country will be exchanged with another country is the first article. The second article is speaking about the infrastructure project. India and Japan had entered into an agreement with the previous government of Sri Lanka that they would want to develop the Colombo port, that is the Easter container terminal at the Colombo port. But once the new government came into picture, there have been certain issues for awarding of the contract. So India is also sorting out this particular issue with Sri Lankan government. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to RT-LAMP, which is reverse transcriptase loop mediated isothermal amplification technology, which of the following statements is or correct? COVID-19 results can be obtained faster in this technique compared to RT-PCR. LAMP reagents can be stored at 4 degrees centigrade when it comes to RT-LAMP, whereas the PCR based reagents are to be stored and transported at minus 20 degrees centigrade. Which of the statements are correct? Both the statements given under this article are correct. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So what is this article speaking about? We have two technologies or two methods to actually find out whether that particular person is tested positive or not. One is what is called as the RT-PCR technique, which is what is precise, which will actually give most of the results, but there are some false narratives as well. And the other that we have is the antigen test or the COVID-19 serology test as well. There are issues when it comes to both these tests, and that is why we have a new technology, and that is called as the LAMP technology, come out by the global community. So it speaks about some of the advantages over the RT-PCR. So what are the advantages? One, it takes less time than the RT-PCR. When it comes to RT-PCR, it may take a lot of time. It may take one day as well. And when it comes to the remote places or villages, it might be more than one day. Why? Because they are in a distant place. When it comes to this particular technology of LAMP, it might be comparatively faster, says this article. And apart from this, let's say we have to carry forward the samples. Let's say there is a COVID patient, the swab tests are done, and we have to take this sample and we have to identify it. This sample and its reagents have to be stored at 4 degrees centigrade when it comes to the LAMP. But that is not the same. Why? Because when it comes to the RT-PCR, it has to be stored at minus 20 degrees centigrade. So this will require more infrastructure. This will mean that there is more cost as well, and this will also mean that people will have to be taught about it, and they will also have to be given enough knowledge transfer when it comes to this technology. So because of all these advantages, the new technology is much better, says this article. Now let's look into the next article. With reference to Asian Development Bank, which of the following statements is or correct? It is headquartered in Beijing. The voting shares are based on size of each member country's economy and not contributions to the bank's authorized capital. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is none. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, these two options are with respect to the AIIB Bank, and these are not with respect to the Asian Development Bank. When it comes to the Asian Development Bank, it is headquartered in Manila in Philippines. The ADB was modeled closely on the World Bank and has a similar weighted voting system where votes are distributed in proportion with the members' capital subscription. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following statements correctly explains the impact of Industrial Revolution on India during the first half of the 19th century? Indian handicrafts were ruined, machines were introduced in Indian textile industry in large numbers, railway lines were laid in many parts of the country, heavy duties were imposed on the imports of British manufacturers. The answer to this is A, that is Indian handicrafts were ruined. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. Will Mohsen Fakhruddin's assassination rekindle tensions in West Asia? Critically examine. Second question, is the tropical zone of Earth expanding? What is causing this expansion? How will it impact the Earth? So please write all your answers on the comment section, peer review, and also come up with constructive criticism as well. This is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.